Hi, this is John Rowell for the Rowell Report. Today is Tuesday, January 20th, 2026. Welcome to this channel, and I hope you're having a great day. So the question today that I'm examining is whether Ukraine is a police state. And before you go into the comment section and say you're a Putin apologist or, you're just putting out Russia propaganda or you don't know what you're talking about, I do have some background with which I have formed an opinion, and so I will provide that at the end of this video. But the first thing I'd like to say is that when I was in college, I was finishing up with my studies, and so I decided to take on a service opportunity, which was teaching conversational English to Romanian refugees. And these refugees had escaped from the Romania of Ceausescu, who was the terrible dictator. The conditions in the country were just appalling. And one of the young men that I was working with had been a Olympic cross-country Olympic ski champion. And so he had been caught in his first attempt to escape the country, and he was put into 1 year of solitary confinement. And then when he left the solitary confinement, they told him that if he ever tried to escape again and he was caught, he would be shot. So no questions asked. So this time he knew he had to do whatever he had to do to escape the country without being caught, and he was successful getting out of the country. And after working with them for some time, they began to open up about the conditions in the country and how the country was surrounded by these border walls and border fences, and there were border guards, and people were being shot. It was very difficult to get out of the country, and so people were, I think, getting into balloons and hot air balloons and trying to escape. And some, getting up in the hot air balloon, instead of escaping, they went further into the country and eventually get caught. So, there are plenty of stories of people who were able to escape and others who didn't and were punished. And all these conditions, the conditions that these Romanians were under during the time of Ceausescu started to sound very similar to the condition in Ukraine, because they had this mobilization law, and they basically said that all those individuals who were in this mobilization law couldn't leave the country. So first, those who were leaving the country were basically walking across the border, and so there were a lot leaving at the beginning, and over time, Ukraine began to build these border fences, and I'll show you a picture of what the border fence looks like. And so then they began to have border guards. They have drones, these, thermal imaging, thermal imaging drones that can pick up thermal signals in the nighttime and see people trying to leave the country. And so then many of them are caught, and those who are caught are immediately mobilized and sent right to the front line, probably with very little training and probably with a certain death sentence. At least they would be sent to the front, and they really wouldn't have much possibility of escaping again, going AWOL, only if they surrender to the Russians. So, like I say, all this begins to sound similar to the Romania of Ceausescu. So I'm going to show you a little bit more about the mobilization, and then I'll show you a picture of the wall, and I'll show you a little bit about what the border guards are doing to capture those who are escaping, those young men or middle-aged men trying to escape Ukraine. And then finally, I'll finish up with a conclusion to this video, whether Ukraine is a police state or not. So anyway, I hope you can join me till the end. So let's go here first with a young man who did not leave Ukraine, but he basically escaped mobilization by hiding out in an apartment, and he doesn't, practically doesn't ever leave. So here's his story.
Real name is one of the so-called avoiders. He never ventures outside without a car.
It became too dangerous to go out on the streets.
Why?
Because of mobilization, because of forced mobilization. So you can see that people are in military uniform, blocking cars, checking civilians. There are too many such videos. People are caged on the streets and sent to the army and to the front line. I support the idea of mobilization because we need to protect our land, but not in this way. It's not democratic.
So that is one individual. Here is more
simply walking, praying.
More mobilization that is going on.
And now, any adult man is at risk
so
of
you
being
can see
taken to the
these
front
people
lines
are
by
not
force.
going voluntarily
More and more videos
to
are going
war.
viral, showing Ukrainian soldiers patrolling the streets in search of recruits. It doesn't
you
matter
have
if
4 or
it's an
5
18-year-old
people
just coming of age,
detaining
or a retired
them,
elderly man.
lifting
If you're
them
old
up,
enough to
carrying
fight,
them off.
They can take you. Amid screams and tears, men are seen being dragged away from their families in broad daylight. Some were simply walking to work. Others shopping at the market. All were forcibly loaded into military vans.
So, you've probably already seen a lot of these videos, but this isn't certainly a democracy. Now, whether this arrives to the point of a police state or not, here is a young man who did escape Ukraine and escape mobilization. So he becomes a refugee in the United States. Very similar to the Romania of Ceausescu. Here is the border fence. So you can see there's a border fence. Basically, you could get over that fence, but it'd be very difficult, and you probably get all cut up. This is going to be razor wire here on the top of the fence. Then you have an outlook post. So, and they have this open area here so they can see anyone who's crossing. And of course, they were going to have some kind of lighting at nighttime. So very difficult for people to get out of the country. And so there was a video here of somebody with a drone. So here we have, this border guard with a drone, and he's looking at the images. And so they see someone who's escaping. Here's 2 people who are escaping, and somewhere in there's a border guard who's going to catch them. So is this a police state? Tracking down people, forcing them to go to a war they don't want to fight? That certainly sounds like Vietnam to me. But, of course, there's obvious differences between Vietnam and the war in Ukraine. But the whole process of the lack of any recourse to avoid going off to a war you don't agree with, and you don't want to hold a gun, you don't want to shoot someone, you don't want to be shot, you don't want to be maimed or, become an amputee. You don't want to wind up with PTSD. And so here's probably the same individual with the drone controller. And of course, this comes to us from Radio Free Europe, Radio Liberty. Now, is this liberty? Is this the information coming from a free country? I don't think so. But this is all about narrative. The defense of democracy is so important that you have to force all these young men to go off and fight a war they don't want to fight. This sounds so much like, in a way, it does sound like Vietnam. They talked about the domino effect. If we didn't stop communism in Vietnam, it would expand like a virus, and freedom in the world would be compromised. And, they come up with all these narratives all incredibly amazing how they can come up with all that information, and even worse, how so many people even believe that. But anyway, here's another video about the escape through the mountain passes, so I'll play this briefly.
In the skies above the Carpathian Mountains that run between Romania and Ukraine. It is now mid-December. Temperatures are well below zero, and yet still, every single week, up to 100 Ukrainian men are risking their lives to literally walk across these mountains. They're doing that because they don't want to have to fight on the front lines in Ukraine.
So I don't know if you saw that, but you know, here is...
Don't want to have to fight on, literally walk doing that because...
So you saw the border fence. If that gets me. Oh, so here is part of the fence. So even in the mountains, they have this. I guess it would be a kind of a razor wire, and so they're having to jump over that, and then their ankles could be sprained, or they could, you know, get a fracture, and so. People who are escaping their own country, that is probably for me the worst, the most clear sign that this country is in deep trouble, not only, you know, politically, but also just as a state. So I think at the end of the Vietnam War was probably the most dangerous time for the United States. People were wondering what this country was all about, and why were we in that war in the first place? Why were people going off to war to become cannon fodder in some swamp or some jungle? So anyway, this report continues on about the people fleeing.
Sometimes they pay smugglers, sometimes they do it on their own. But in almost every scenario, it is a dangerous and difficult journey, as we have seen, and as the men of the mountain rescue.
So there we go. I mean, this is the dangerous and difficult. This sounds like the Romania that I heard of Ceausescu. That was, you know, more than a police state. Well, certainly was a very repressive police state. And this time, strangely enough, instead of Romania being the place that people were escaping from, now it's a place where people are escaping to. And so, and of course, here's this report, I think 3 years ago, from Sky News. And this report is this person saying Russia has become a police state, because this young man was from Russia and he was escaping mobilization. So Sky News put out this video, Russia has become a police state. Well, if the shoe fits, put it on, so to speak, wear it. If you are forcing people to go off to fight for a conflict they don't believe in, and to die on the front lines when they don't believe in that, they don't want to do that, then your country has basically become a police state. And so, is Ukraine a police state? I think the evidence is very clear. The people are voting with their feet, and they voted that this is a police state. They don't want to have anything to do with it. They just want to get out. And so, I think it's pretty clear. Although there are those who just simply are going to blow through all common sense, all objectivity, and they will say, no, this is Russian propaganda. You're a Putin apologist, blah, blah, blah. Okay, no, I spoke personally with these Romanian refugees who escaped Ceausescu, and the similarities between that Romania of Ceausescu and the Ukraine of today is just too much. There's too many similarities. So for me, I can't really deny that it's looking very much like a police state. So anyway, that concludes this video. If you have any comments to make, please do so below. I will leave links to all these resources in the description. And of course, all comments are welcome. So thank you for joining me for this video, and I hope you have a great day. Bye bye.